Hello, welcome, and we're happy to have in this live stream podcast Emigrare Viva Latino in at the Honorable Rebecca Schulz, Minister of Environment and Protect Areas since June 2023, and we're happy to have here in the first program participate with us, and all the time we see is the first, but not the last time participate the Minister with the Latino Canadian Community podcast live stream.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you to take time to participate with us, Minister. And can you talk what is the specific task that have it in your mandate letter, please? A little.
Yeah, so in the Ministry of Environment and Protected Areas, obviously, first and foremost, we want to make sure that we uphold our high environmental standards and make sure that our air and land and water and animals, biodiversity, birds, you name it, are protected. While we still manage the growth that we're seeing in our province, we're seeing growth that we haven't seen in decades. And so with that comes building housing, for example, and making sure that our major industries continue to grow so that people have jobs. So it's all about making sure that we're streamlining kind of some of the timelines and approval processes while still maintaining those high environmental standards and making sure that we have jobs and a strong economy, but also a healthy environment for generations to come.
And that's interesting because they have to know for next generation, but at the same time have work and the support to the people. How affect the province of Alberta the federal climate plan?
We have a number of issues, I'll say, with the federal climate approach. And it's not just us. What we've seen in the courts in these last couple of weeks, we saw the Supreme Court of Canada essentially say that the federal government's Bill C-69 was unconstitutional. Their labeling of plastics as toxins was also just deemed by the federal court as unreasonable and unconstitutional. And I think what we're seeing is everyday Albertans and Canadians saying, you know what, we want to do our part. We want to make sure that we're reducing emissions and protecting our environment, but we also care about affordability. We care about energy reliability and energy security and making sure that we still are able to maintain our high standard of living, our high quality of life, our affordable access to energy and electricity, for example. But, we have to look at all of those things at the same time. The federal government has not done that. They set these targets that are wildly unrealistic. They don't listen to provinces. They haven't listened to industry. And so they come up with these commitments they make often when they're at these big overseas conventions, and then they come back and say, okay, but the provinces can figure it out. What we're seeing now is provinces standing up and saying, you know what, enough is enough. We saw, for example, the federal Liberals, they produced a carve out on the carbon tax for home heating oil in Atlantic Canada. I think what we saw there was some recognition that this carbon tax, it's not reducing emissions, but it is definitely driving up the cost of living for everyday Canadians. And we're starting to see Canadians say, you know what, enough is enough.
Minister, you talk very specific two topics, electricity and gas. And most right now, winter is coming and it's arriving in some cities. It's very high. How work Alberta in this situation? How help the government of Alberta to the community?
So I would say, electricity in Alberta is very complex, and the Minister of Affordability and Utilities is working with industry to see those numbers come down. Part of it, we've also got to recognize when it comes to electricity, we have reduced emissions in that area by 53%, but it also cost over $1 billion. So some of that is paid for on your bills, but we also see $100 million going still to paying that off from essentially your tax dollars. So from our government revenues. So that's $100 million a year that we can't put into healthcare or education or supporting people with their utility bills at a time when the costs are a little bit higher. The good news is it does look like the pricing is coming down, which is positive, but the Minister of Affordability and Utilities is looking at how we can manage that into the long term. Now, what we've seen from the federal government, their latest commitment, their regulation, the first draft came out earlier this year around a net zero electricity grid by 2035. First of all, it's really hard to get one accurate number for how much that would cost because the technology doesn't even exist yet, which makes it very challenging. We haven't made the investments in technology that it would take to get us there. But, all of the estimates show that this would cost billions of dollars, if not trillions. And right now, again, we expect that when it's the middle of winter, as you said, it's getting cold. I think of young families. If you wake up with a child in the middle of the night, in the middle of January, you want to turn on the light, you expect that you have power. That is something that, Albertans rely on, Canadians rely on, and we're standing up to make sure that we're not in a situation where we have blackouts and brownouts and the prices of electricity going up by 3, 4, 5 times. Could you imagine that at a time like this when affordability is the major concern of Canadians? So, what we've said is absolutely not. We have our own goals around 2050 and emissions reduction. We want to work with industry to get there. But the way the federal government is approaching this, there are huge risks for Albertans when it comes to both costs and reliability of electricity that we just can't accept.
What is the proposal for the government to Alberta at the federal government? What is your suggestion?
Our suggestion is these are areas of provincial jurisdiction, right? And so there's a reason why we would like to be consulted because we have the expertise, we have the industries, we understand how electricity is generated in our provinces. We need the flexibility to respect our unique circumstances here in Alberta. We don't have hydroelectricity to the extent that Quebec would have or BC would have, obviously, when you look at our geography, right? We don't have that. So we need some flexibility to say, here are the unique circumstances in this province, and other provinces are asking for the very same type of flexibility. And just some common sense. We do not believe that at a time like this, where affordability is the biggest concern for everyday families, seniors on fixed incomes, small businesses, we cannot just go and add additional costs right now.
And it's not only that way you say, only not the family, also the business, the any people that we need. And here in Canada, for kitchen, for food, for everything, you need electricity and gas.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, this is a huge problem, and most people, they have these things to do in winter because winter is necessary, is survival with what we need. Alberta was the unique natural heritage site. What steps are being taken to ensure the preservation and sustainable management of these sites for the future generations, Minister?
Yeah, and that is one of our priorities. Obviously, is maintaining some of the things that make Alberta so unique and, quite frankly, so special. We work on some of that also with the Minister of Forestry and Parks because a lot of that would be managed through our Parks ministry. But it does mean making sure that when we look at, land use planning is what it's called. It doesn't sound very exciting, but it's very important for how we can make sure that we are developing, we're able to grow, but we're still keeping those spaces that make Alberta special protected, whether that be protecting the biodiversity, the animals, the fish, the birds that live in those areas, whether that be making sure that our water quality maintains or stays high quality down the road, that we do a lot of air monitoring as well. And so these are things that our department does on a day-to-day basis. And, a lot of it, I think, really, when we see the growth pressures we're seeing right now, growth is a good thing. People are coming to Alberta because it's an amazing place. We have an advantage when it comes to affordability. We have an advantage when it comes to job opportunities. We have a great education system. And so more and more people are calling Alberta home. We want to be able to manage the demands of that growth, but again, still protect our special places.
Si algo he aprendido a lo largo de este camino es que no hay nada, pero nada más poderoso que ser humilde de espíritu. La humildad de espíritu te llevará muy lejos y te impulsará a ser una guerrera con un propósito mucho mayor. Así que trata a tu limpiador como un dueño de empresa y verás como todo fluirá. Bendiciones.
You have almost 5 months. Then we just start with the Minister of the Environment. Today, congratulations for 5 months. What is the result and what is the challenge it's coming for you, Minister?
I would say many of our challenges up to this point, we've obviously faced a number of pieces of regulation or legislation from the federal government that are problematic. So whether that be plastics, whether that be their wildly unrealistic electricity plans, we also, we expect they'll come out with an emissions cap for our oil and gas industry. That has an impact on entire communities, on jobs, on the overall economic ability of our province to then invest in things like healthcare and education. So these are very, very problematic. Moving forward, though, we also, I have to talk about water because we've seen that it was a very dry year this past year. And the world is expected to face an El Nino next year moving forward. That's worldwide. So if we see less snow, less precipitation, rain, we have to be preparing for an even drier year next year. So we're working with municipalities. We've got some irrigation districts. We've got watersheds. And of course, with our department and some other government departments on how we can manage that moving forward. So there's kind of that emergent pressure, I would say, to get us through the next year. But then we also want to have that conversation, the bigger conversation about what does water look like in the long term? How can we make sure that we have storage, that we have the water infrastructure that we need to essentially manage that resource in an effective way?
Exactly, Minister. Minister, what is your message for the Latino and Canadian community in your constituency?
You know what? I just want to say how grateful I am. I think our diversity is one of our greatest strengths. And I am just so blown away, I would say, by the amazing benefits that the Latino community has, both from a cultural perspective and an economic perspective. I think, certainly your community has really helped us become more vibrant. And we really appreciate all of the contributions that you've made to our province, both in the past and will continue to in the future. So, I just want to say, as somebody who represents a very diverse riding, we've got a number of, I would say, seniors facilities, but we also have a hugely young and growing population. We've got so many people choosing to call Calgary home, whether that be from other provinces or other countries around the world. And I just think it's so exciting to see. And I'm just very grateful for the contributions that your community makes.
Thank you, Minister. And the last but not the least question I have, most people is coming because from Toronto and Ontario to Alberta. What is your message for this community that see this interview for sure and say, hey, let me see more about Alberta and better for the minister?
Well, I would just say, obviously we've had the Alberta is Calling campaign. And so I would say, thank you for taking up the call and choosing Alberta, because I do believe that Alberta is the best place in the world to live, to work, to raise a family. I'm originally actually from Saskatchewan. So I also chose Alberta. And I always say I chose Alberta because of that promise. It's got an entrepreneurial spirit and the promise that if you are willing to work hard, you can chart your own path. right? And I think that that's the excitement that is Alberta. And we're very, very glad that you chose to call Alberta your home, as I did a number of years ago. I still think that our best days as a province lie ahead. I know there are some challenges, of course, that we face, but we are just so very blessed to live in this amazing place that is strong and free and the economic engine of our country, with just so much opportunity. And like I said, great education. It's wonderful for young families. And, I'm just so glad to see that so many people are choosing to call Alberta home, as I once did as well.
Well, thank you so much, Minister, for taking time to participate in Viva Latino Emigrare. And for sure, it's the first one, not the last time you participate with us. And we are happy wherever you want to come and talk, to present to our community anything. We're very happy to open microphone to you, Minister. Thank you so much for
wonderful. Thank you so much.